Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Selling AI. Today we're hanging out with Rich Lane to talk all things sales coaching. Rich has a great background in running long cycle enterprise deals, and he's specifically talented at managing complex groups of stakeholders within an opportunity. He was in marketing at L'Oreal for about 5 years before deciding to break into sales the hard way, right back at square one as a BDR. He moved up through some AE roles at Sedna, Verkada, and now he's the head of commercial at Kepler, the maritime data intelligence company. So in today's episode, Rich is going to walk us through how he's using AI in coaching himself as a leader, but also coaching his reps. I'm really excited to walk through an innovative way for sales leaders to sharpen their coaching game, something we don't spend nearly enough time talking about. All right, let's get into it. Hey, Rich, thanks for taking the time to talk to us about sales coaching today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Warren. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Great. Well, Rich, tell us a little bit about why you wanted to make the switch from your role at L'Oreal into sales, and then tell us a bit about what you're focused on today at Kepler.
Yeah, amazing. So as you said, I spent 5 years at L'Oreal, started off right on the graduate scheme, straight out of university, and then moved into a variety of different marketing roles, and then made the switch actually at L'Oreal over to commercial. But really randomly on an evening in London, having a friend with a beer who was an account executive working in SaaS. I didn't even know this industry existed, and her day in the life sounded like so cool. Managing lots of deals, closing lots of business, speaking to so many different stakeholders, and particularly the C-suite. So I was at a point in my life and my career where I made a big jump and a big gamble. And I always remember the really strong piece of advice that they gave me was, even though I could have gone straight into an AE role, he always said, go straight into a BDR and generate your own pipeline. It's such the most important skill in the job, and that always stuck with me. And I'm so thankful I did that.
That's awesome. What are you working on today, Kepler?
Amazing. So I've actually recently just stepped into a new role where I'm heading up new business for Europe, for Kepler, working across the full maritime suite of products.
Awesome. That's great. That's awesome. Well, let's dive in deeper. Super excited to launch into this topic. So let's start off. Most sales coaching happens in a 30 to 60 minute meeting once a week. What do you feel like is broken about how sales leaders coach reps today?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question. I think, look, what you see traditionally across many organizations is that typically managers get promoted into their roles because they've been the best ICs. Everyone typically has been promoted because of that, but they don't actually get shown or support on how to lead or how to coach or how to be the best manager. And I think the default style in a lot of organizations goes back to, well, here's how I did it, or make more calls, or work as hard as I did. And I think this is because no one has ever actually shown them how to coach or how to lead or another way. And they've been rewarded for, that performance, not actually for growing or developing other people. And, I think a lot of managers, they have their own quota to hit, right? Or they have a team quota to hit. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And a lot of managers are purely focused on, right, how do we get to this number, as they should be? But it means by any means necessary. So that means a lot of the conversations with reps, they turn into pipeline calls or forecast calls. Every conversation begins to formulate into business or how we move in deals forward. And the focus isn't actually on coaching their reps to become better salespeople. And I think it's actually, Warren, super important to distinguish between coaching, training, or feedback. And I think those three get mixed up all the time.
Gotcha. Can you give me a little bit more on that, the coaching, training, feedback? What do you see as, let's say, the difference between those three?
So I think about coaching as thinking and taking ownership. So when I coach my rep, it's maybe asking questions like, Warren, what was your intention going into that call? What happened? What options do you see happening next time? Whereas training might be, I'm going to show you or show you about X product works, or how we should run discovery, or how you should be using MEDPIC. And then feedback could be an observation. So, Warren, I noticed you skipped decision criteria in the last call. What was the reasoning? Or how would you do that next time? So that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, so I think there's a line that gets blurred a lot, and it's between the coaching on deals and improving like rep skills, right? So there's like, and when you're coaching on deals, you should be doing so in a way where like reps should over time improve. But I think we lean a little bit more heavily towards the how do we close this deal on that side of the fence. When you think of like coaching, is there a split there? Would you use two different frames of mind there? Whereas like coaching on deals and coaching reps, how would you kind of work through that mentally?
Yeah, so I think I like to with my team, I'll typically have like a forecast call once a week where we purely talk about deals, pipeline, forecast, and then we'll have a completely separate one-to-one, which is like a personal one-to-one. So
Okay.
that is anything they want to bring to the table, whether it's the career development, where they want to be in the next 2 to 3 years, what they might be struggling with, pressure they're feeling, etc., etc. It can be anything, and they form the agenda. And a lot of that does turn into, well, actually, I think I'm stronger in this area than that area. How do I develop? What can I do to really work on that?
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, let's continue to keep those lines of thought as we move through the rest of the discussion. You told me in particular you've been creating a custom GPT for each one of the reps that you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk me through what that actually looks like, what goes into it, and what makes it useful?
Yeah. So I think before I go into that, I think it's really important to kind of understand my thinking behind it. So I'm thinking, the way I'm thinking about AI, right, is humans and AI have complementary like superpowers, right? So if we can work together, we can overcome each other's weaknesses. So that might look like, say, my friend as an example, he might have like a super bad memory. They don't remember a lot of things, right? They have a transcriber in all their Zoom calls, and also they get impacted by their environment. Whereas AI, on the other hand, it remembers so much more than they do, and it then has instant access to the internet, essentially, right? And it doesn't get affected by the environment. So if there's a fire going on, an earthquake happening, they still think the same way and operate in the same way. But it also doesn't have that fire in the belly that, let's say, I might have, or that unique context. So I always start when you're creating or when I've created my custom GPTs, with my own point of view. And also it's like a pocket rocket. So how I describe that is, as you mentioned, created these individual ChatGPT projects, let's say. So it could be like one-to-one forecast review deal coach. And I like to think of it as essentially basically my own CRO in my pocket, where they've seen every single deal pattern imaginable. So what I've done is I've created instructions where I've wrote, it's about probably 1,000 words on my coaching philosophy. So what I've learned over the years, some of the best VP of sales, CROs I've worked with. So it's how I think about qualification, what red flags to look in a potential deal, exposing particular questions that could expose deals. And also I've instructed it to act like the best performing CRO, like a John McMahon, for example. And I've tried to create that kind of digital twin that I can take into that. Then within that, you upload all of your forecast calls in there, and that gets added to the product knowledge, right? So what that looks like is when we review X deal next week, it will remember that 3 weeks ago, the rep hadn't identified the economic buyer, and then they committed to achieving that. And then by building that context into it, obviously one of the kind of things with that is it doesn't comprehend personal behavior. So, it doesn't understand maybe the rep's unique selling style, their strengths, their weaknesses, for example. And then essentially then you have to build you challenge those assumptions that come out of it. And that's what I found really, really reliable from using those kind of custom GBTs. And then on top of that, I use these forecast calls and these custom chat GBTs to actually challenge my own assumptions about the forecast call. So what assumptions did I make in that forecast call that maybe might not be true? Or what would have made my coaching 10x better? Challenge my assumption that I said about X risk on that deal. Or even type of things like how was my tone during the call? What did you sense from my rep's reaction? How did they respond? Etc.
Cool. Let's get through the tactics then. This is awesome. I'm going to peel this back. So if someone else wanted to implement this, they could. So let's say I'm your rep. you've decided that you're going to implement this process with me. We've been working together for like 6 months, so you have some historical data, but you haven't set your GPT up specifically for me. Tell me tactically, what do you do to get off the ground as you're preparing for our first and next forecast call together?
So based on like a 6 months working together, right? I would have formed maybe a hypothesis in terms of where your strengths may lie, where your weaknesses are, and I will instruct that custom chat GPT based on my knowledge on you, in terms of how you think, how you react, what your performance history has been like, why maybe potential deals may have slipped in the past. Are you not getting to the economic buyer soon enough? Are you only speaking to 2 stakeholders instead of 9? What does that look like? So I will put that hypothesis in, but then I will also give it context to say, in reference to this, what would a top account executive be doing? What would if they want to progress, etc., and start building it out that way. But then I would also be kind of setting my parameters of what I look for in terms of managing a deal as well.
Awesome. And so let's say we're going to talk about like the Tesco deal on Thursday, and you're getting ready to prep for the call. What would be like what information are you asking it for, and what information are you getting out so that you could effectively manage that call differently than we have in the past?
So, typically, with my team, I'm managing like 6-7 reps. It's a lot of work. Like traditionally, I was watching loads of recordings, call recordings. I'm scanning CRM. I'm like diving into MedPick. It takes a lot of time, right? Which then takes time away from coaching, joining my team's calls. And now by doing this, I'm able to ask the system, right? Did Warren, did he ask about the business problem at Tesco? Did he talk about features, or did he talk about the business impact? Did he identify the economic buyer? What's the compelling event? What risk did the prospect mention that Warren might not have picked up on? Those types of questions that I'm kind of then adding more context, and actually when we sit down, we're going to able to think more strategically, and I think, in my opinion, have a better conversation.
Cool. And so this is like a good replacement for, like, the typical prep work has been like watching the calls or reading Salesforce, or honestly, at least half the time doing none of that and just coming in the meeting cold, and like hoping to muddle your way through it is what a lot of sales leaders are doing because they have lots of reps and lots to do. All right, great. So you walk into that information, you have a good insight on the deals. That insight in the deals also has like your context around like an ideal sales leader behind it. So it's like acting like a CRO. It also has like your past descriptions as to like the attributes of the rep you're walking into. And so you create this whole picture that's somewhat customized, and so it helps you coach better on this deal. Great. We have the call. What happens after the call tactically? What's the process that you do to keep this updated?
Yep. So I think then obviously uploading the transcript of the call into the custom GPT. Then I will then be asking that custom ChatGPT, based on what I've put in, to actually review my performance as a coach, as a sales leader. So it's not just about, I think, with something like this, the rep. It's also about myself. How do I improve as a leader? How do I improve as a coach? How do I become that inspiring leader that I want to be? So, for example, I will access to assess my performance and also challenge my assumptions. Like I said earlier, like what would have made my coaching 10x better? How did I coach? Where could I have pushed harder, or where could I have been maybe more supportive? Based on this conversation, what should I focus on in our next one-to-one? Like actually identifying my strengths and weaknesses through there as well. But then also, if, for example, yourself, Warren, if you're struggling with getting access to the economic buyer, that's a skill gap. It's not actually necessarily a deal gap. So it's like then better framing our next conversation with like tangible accountability and actions going forward.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. So we've gotten through the tactical, right? So and do you upload like every call transcript from like the meetings that your reps are having, or a sample of those?
No, all of the transcripts.
All of them. So like you have a GPT that has, for Warren Cucker, all the transcripts loaded into that GPT. So you know all the meeting context that I'm having, right? All right, cool. Sounds good. So give me, what's the like biggest improvement that you see? Let's keep it high level. Like what, like across the business? What's the benefit that Kepler has when you execute this workflow?
So it's a good question, and I think this is where the industry is kind of at the moment. Is like there's loads of like use of AI, but it's like how is it like actually coming back in tangible, revenue essentially, right? So I think for me, the use of it, I think it improves forecasting. I think you're able to predict revenue more reliably. I think then you can allocate resources, you can identify skill gaps within the team, of where more time is needed. Is it on discovery? Is it on demo? Like, are we getting to a trial and then what's happening? We can adjust strategies then more proactively. I think as well, pipeline management is definitely improving because it's enabling the team to focus more on top of the funnel. Because we're taking time, we're giving them time back essentially, right? So more time on product pipeline management, but also more time in front of the customer. So they're able to spend more time, and hopefully we'll see an increase in performance as we roll this out. But then also improved like business efficiency, right? I'm constantly hearing that reps have a lot to do, right? Their days are full on and updating the CRM, but they're able now, they've got more time. So CRM's updated, they can prioritize follow-ups, meeting prep, reporting, etc. So it reduces the admin fee essentially. And in terms of like coaching, I think it makes it more scalable. Would be my own take on it.
Cool. That's excellent. It's obviously like a big impact on the strategic side. Okay, so like when it comes to coaching and like from a sales leader standpoint, like the goal of the coaching calls is actually the opposite of a scenario where you think you're trying to find ways to like find gaps, poke holes, those types of things. You really want in a perfect world that the rep is never surprised by a question, right? They should almost be able to, when you get into a rhythm, be coaching themselves, right? Like if you're doing your job as a sales leader, if the rep feels in this relationship that like actually they don't know what they're going to be asked, then like it means the sales leader is not doing their jobs, right? So from your perspective, if this is a different approach, one, you're acting with much more information, and two, it's a more personalized view of coaching. How should the rep prepare differently maybe than they have in the past for this type of like forecast coaching call?
Yeah, I think I think it comes back to it really depends upon the rep's mindset. So, some see coaching as something that happens to them. The best reps see it as their own development, right? Opportunity. I think the data that you're getting out of let's say the custom chat GPT allows us to coach reps and guide their next actions, I suppose. So I think what they want to be preparing is, well, what happened last time? So what did they commit to? This is huge, right? So they should be asking AI like, well, here's the transcript from my call with Rich. What did I commit to? Did I deliver on that this week? Like you said before, like there's no more showing up and being like 10 minutes to get like the CRM up and, oh, this is what we did, or blah, 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 blah. So I think it holds you more accountable. I think it allows you to prep your data updates. So there's no more, it's actually, here's what happened last week on my top 5 deals. Here's the questions that Rich might ask. And it allows them to prepare that in a more effective way. And then they're already drafted their next moves, right? Well, it's giving them time back. So there's no excuse for outdated like CRM or vague next steps. So can they come in with, well, here's what I think we should do this week. Do you think this is the right move? And then it allows the conversation to be more strategic and adding more value instead of, a rep showing up, 10 minutes takes to get the admin up, or you're trying to, upskill them on what happened last week. This is a deal we're talking about. What's the context, etc.
All right, cool. Let's say I'm gonna get real tactical again. So like a rep could prepare appropriately. Let's pretend that you're now a sales rep. You have a manager that follows the process just like you. What are you doing tactically to be ready as best you can for the manager that's using a custom GPT with all your transcripts and like custom instructions and like some training and gaps, descriptors in there? What could the rep tactically do?
Yeah, so I'd be like basically doing a role play before I go into the meeting with my manager and understanding, well, this is typically what he's going to ask me. This is the type of questions he's asked me. This is how he tends to challenge me. He's particularly challenged me about an economic buyer. What can I do then to address that? So it's kind of like briefing it on how I think, essentially, so they can best prepare. And it's the same when you're going in and having a conversation with a customer. You can do the same thing.
Yeah. How would you remember, like, what technology should they be using to do that?
Well, they can be, whether they use, there's a lot of sales tech out there, right? I mean, Gong does this. You could be using a transcriber, Gemini, Zoom, whatever that looks like. As long as you're getting a potential transcript, you can use that and leverage it into whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever your kind of system of choices.
Yeah, and even let's say Absolute software, right? Like the rep should almost be creating a mirror custom GPT, right? But there's like a different subset, right, that you could be using. So now I want to, not only do I want to have an effective coaching call, right? So like this process of like asking questions and prepping for the call can actually help me close my deals. I also want to like manage up to my boss, right? So you could even be asking your sales leader, great, can I have the transcripts from your other coaching calls? That you have. You're loading them into shoot them my way as well. And so like now I don't have just how he's coaching me. I may want to be like the top rep of the company, and there may be 10 reps I look up to. I want to know how he's coaching or she's coaching them, right? So like what questions can I get ahead of? Because right now what shouldn't be happening is shouldn't be the status quo when you're coaching me, right? Like I should be advancing so that you never have to ask me a question twice in a perfect world, right? We don't live in that world, but you may have to do that. I want to get way ahead. Like how is everybody else being coached? And there's a deal impact. Maybe I'm like finding gaps in my deals I haven't thought of, maybe, but there's also like a effective coaching impact. So I'd almost want to create a mirror GPT. This is my manager. This is how they're managing forecasts. I never want to be asked a question more than 3 times in a row. Give me a question that my manager might ask based on 3 times in a row. I'd almost want that shadow GPT basically to prep me in the exact way that my sales leader is going to bring it. Well, that takes me like the interesting question. What if like the sales leader is like doing great coaching and like the rep is always getting better and like gaps are being closed and the rep is using a mirror GPT and like they're getting ahead of all the questions? What if there's an end game where like they don't have to have the coaching call anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic, right? It's like there's a lot of talk around, can AI replace jobs? Can it replace sales leaders? But I actually think there's a way where, there is a way where it makes selling skills, I think, and coaching more essential. So I think it's all about context, right? And I think you need to start with your own point of view first, because I think over-relying on AI is not selling, in my opinion. I think you have a lot of data accessible, you have mechanics, you have a lot of context, right? But it still cannot, in my opinion, creatively like problem solve. It cannot negotiate for you. It cannot build political capital and navigate an organization, understand the politics, understand the people, understand personalities within an organization and navigating that in an enterprise sale. So I think I think it will enhance it. I don't think it will be a negative towards it, in my opinion.
Awesome. Great. Before we head out, just quick, if someone was going to start this process tomorrow, what's one thing they shouldn't do? What's a mistake they could run into really quickly that could help derail starting to implement a process like this?
I think it's easy, right? I think it's very easy to go on a tangent with AI, and I think a lot of people will make mistakes by not starting with the end goal in mind. So, like, what are they looking to achieve? So, I would always say, looking at the next quarter, what metric are you looking to improve, and focus on that one? Is it win rate? Is it your average deal size? Is it average deal cycle? Like, what is that? And then start small. Are you doing it on your, let's say, your ICP definition or your account selection, territory prep? Like, pick one thing, and then my other piece of advice would just be start just diving in and playing around with it, and getting yourself, into the depths of AI.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, hot take then, real quick. What's something about, let's say, AI in sales that you think sales leaders might not be ready to hear?
Tricky question. I might be a bit controversial here. I think AI could expose maybe the managers who were never actually coaching in the first place. I think historically, as we've talked about and briefly touched upon, I think coaching has been plagued by, it's quite manual, it's quite generic sometimes. Managers, like you said, don't really have the time. You enter a meeting and it's all quite rushed. You have 30 minutes and then before you know it's over, and then another week goes by. And I think, as we've mentioned, a lot of sales leaders might be scared AI might replace them. And I think it's wrong, because I think AI will expose maybe the bad ones and make the good ones even better. And focusing on more quality interactions rather than like quantity.
Yeah, that's a common theme that we're coming across, and actually in these conversations, is that AI can actually help improve the human to human relationship. When you're managing 5, 7, 9, 11 different folks, that management can become quite impersonal and quite uncustomized because there's too much information. The AI helping you synthesize information, sales coaching is just a great way to do it. If you're changing how you coach rep to rep by about 30% because you're leveraging what you set up, that's a phenomenal outcome for the relationship between the sales leader and their reps. Great. And before we head off, Rich, do you have any events on the docket that you're going to be going to? And in particular, where on social media can someone find you?
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, find me on LinkedIn. So Richard Lane, I'm sure Warren can share my profile. Yeah, and I'm always up for a chat, conversation. I'm pretty nerdy when it comes to this type of thing. And yeah, obviously working within the maritime industry, so we'll be going to a host of events coming up. We've got, IE Week coming up shortly in the new year, then off to the big ones like Breakbulk and Posidonia next year. So yeah.
Awesome. Great, Rich. Well, I appreciate you spending the time with us, walking us through how you're using coaching, honestly, in a different way than I've heard before. And I hope our listeners get a chance to implement. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Take care.